Hello, my name is Elmo Rawling. I'm a Quaternary geologist at the Wisconsin Geological Natural History Survey, and I am recording this presentation for the annual meeting of the Geologic Mapping Advisory Committee in September of 2021. I will be presenting about funding provided by the USGS through the Great Lakes Geological Mapping Coalition. We have been using this funding to support rotosonic drilling to better understand deeper quaternary deposits in areas where our 2D mapping indicates that we may have the potential for deeper deposits. The picture in the rig here shows the rotosonic rig back in February of 2021, drilling in McMillan Marsh for another project. What you see back here is a flatbed truck with the steel stem in a 10 to 20 foot flight. There's a crane that lifts that onto this drill head here. This drill head then has a diamond cut bit as well as a sonicator to penetrate depths of several hundred feet through the quaternary, as well as penetrate through boulders or into the bedrock as far as we would like. As you may recall from prior years, our strategy here has been to highlight 4 areas that we have been working in where we know or suspect that we could improve our understanding of the quaternary geology with rotosonic borings. These include the Driftless area, the Central Sands, the Superior region, and the Scuppernong Basin in Jefferson and Dodge County. We have been approved for the past 2 cycles to drill, collect rotosonic borings in the Driftless area and in the Superior region. I would like to bring up to date on those efforts. However, our 2021 proposal in the Driftless area was delayed due to COVID, and we are in a no-cost extension, and we are scheduled to collect those borings after this meeting starting October 4th of 2021. So I'll bring you up to speed on those next year. Our 21-22 proposal has been approved. However, that will not begin until September 15th of 2021. And so at the time of this meeting, we have nothing to report there either. However, I do want to talk a little bit about how our target area in the Superior region has changed since we proposed this and talked about this last year at this committee. So this is a portion of the Superior region. This is the edge of Bayfield County, and what I've done here is shade out the lower elevations of the Miller Creek Formation so we can focus on this surface here in the down the center of the Bayfield Peninsula that's sort of gradually rising in this direction. I had proposed potentially to drill in Bibbin Marsh last year. However, I was unable to find a appropriate site for the rotosonic rig. And so I'll talk a little bit about how we're changing where we're going to drill in this and why we're going to drill in this region. Before I do that, I'll focus in here, and then I'll focus in up here. So we zoom in, right? What you see here is a collapsed surface, lots of collapse. So lots of deposition over buried ice. But what we can make out here is a nice sharp ice contact face with an esker leading into it and a fan of outwash emanating from that apex there. A little bit of collapse here, more collapse here, but in general you see that surface grading to the southwest. Higher surface here, higher outwash fan surface here that this one has cut into and refilled. And this one's ice contact face is a little more collapsed. Not a lot of collapse as we go in this direction, but if I zoom in up here, right, what we see is another fan complex where we have an ice contact face, lots of pitting right at the apex, but then another fan surface that too was dissected and refilled, right? So several sort of terraces in there of outwash fan. So another complex here, less collapse. And if we look at a cross section through these fans and through this collapsed area and then some higher topography and then this fan surface to the north, right, what you see is a gradual increase, right, a steep drop off, kind of a lot of collapse, but a gradual increase, steep drop off, gradual increase, steep drop off. Right? And what each one of these steep surfaces are probably ice contact faces with fans emanating off of them, fan emanating off of them, maybe something over here, up here, fan emanating off of it. If we look again, right, that would be like right here, these surfaces, lots of collapse, maybe another fan surface in there, but it's collapsed, another fan surface, partially collapsed, and then another fan surface, not as much collapse. So it took me a while to recognize these big surfaces as fan surfaces as a consequence of mapping it out. And as part of another project, we collected some rotosonic borings where the green dots are. This was funded by the United States Forest Service. Anna Failing is leading that project. She has installed wells at those locations. And the borings look something like this. I presented on this a little bit last year, right? But this is a better sort of graphic. We've had more time to describe these cores since then. And what you see is largely sand and gravel. So these are scaled by elevation, and depth is the same scale on both of these. One of the borings to 280 feet, the second boring to 220 feet. And when we look at the sediment in this first boring here to the east, right, mostly sand and gravel, either clean sand or areas where there's lots of cobbles. There are lots of boulders in there, some of which we were able to collect. This one you can see has been scarred by the borings. And then in this first boring that we collected, just a thin area of laminated silty clay and another area of laminated silty clay at the bottom. Just a few kilometers to the west, right, we don't see good correlations with these lake deposits. And in this boring, we find, again, mostly sand and gravel, some laminated lake sediment, and then, right, 1, 2, 3 dimix of Copper Falls Formation till. Again, that's the location. This one's a little lower. This is the one that had the till in it. This one's a little higher. This one was mostly sand and gravel. And so our plan combining United States Forest Service funding with some of the Great Lakes Coalition funding is to collect one more boring in this area and to get into these areas that have a little more of an ice collapse or a stagnant ice landscape. And that'll be either hopefully up in this area, which is higher, and we'll drill to the bottom of these holes, right? So this will be something like 350 feet. And this is my preferred site. This is my second preferred site. These are on a not as well developed Forest Service road, so I'm not sure the rig can get there when it's fully loaded. If not, we'll go to these areas, probably this one, where the road is much more developed and we should have no problem accessing. Okay, so that's the last two funding cycles. Again, the Driftless area will be drilling in October of 2021. Superior region will drill in spring or fall of 2022. And then the proposal that we're here to vote on today will begin in 2022 and go to September 2023. And for now, Eric and my thinking is that we will either focus on central Wisconsin or the Scuppernong Basin. The central sands, sort of shown in this area, right where the Green Bay Lobe terminates into the Glacial Lake Wisconsin Basin, in western Waushara County, Portage County, what we have is the older Arnott Moraine, the Hancock Moraine, Almond Moraine, and a series of tunnel channels evidenced across that surface, sort of highlighted or schematically shown here. And this is an area where we've worked with the DNR as well as the Great Lakes Coalition, to investigate the subsurface with active seismic profile. And this has been published and is in a DNR report. If you want more information, I can send that to you. But quickly, right, what we see is a bright reflector about 100 feet down that has been cut by this channel. This white on the top is the surface expression, so that's the little bit deeper or lower topography above the channel. And we put one rotosonic boring through that channel, and it would be nice to put another boring through this sediment package to see how this is similar or different to the fill within the channel. So that's one potential site in the central sands. The other potential target is the Scuppernong Basin, and just a quick plug for an upcoming Wisconsin WGNHS bulletin. Libby Ives and myself have been working on Jefferson County. It was partially funded by the survey and partially funded by the coalition. And this is just an image of the plate that is has been through review. There's been a bulletin that's been through review. We have responded to the reviewers' comments, and I believe it is at this point with the reviewers double checking our responses. So I anticipate 6-ish months from now, this should be available. And what you can see from here, right, this is just a quick JPEG, but what you can see from here is in blues are areas where there is Scuppernong sediment. And if you look at the bedrock elevations or depth of bedrock image of the county, this is Jefferson County again, right? You have these deep areas in the Scuppernong Valley and the Ancestral Crawfish Valley where we're getting up to 300-400 feet of sediment, and this is another potential target for a rotosonic boring. Now, one of the reasons I say potential targets is because in addition to the geologic borings, on occasion, the USGS will make a special request that we can or cannot respond to for special products that they would like to see us use the coalition funds for. So 2 years ago, they asked if the states, could provide them, the United States, the federal government, with a bedrock elevation map at a scale of 1 to 500,000. So we did that. This is a draft that you're seeing here. And this is something that Matt Raywald at the survey has been working on. And so if you're interested in seeing this, it should be publicly available in a month or two. You can email me and I can get you in contact with Matt for details, but there will be a report on how he generated this map. It was most of the data is from well construction report data, as well as previous interpretations where they were available of bedrock elevation. You can see at this scale, right, 1/500,000 is the intended scale, that we have a lot of resolution where there's a lot more wells. And you can see some artifacts in the Northwest. You can see Burnett County is a little spotty, and you can see some sort of hard lines in the transition between Bayfield and Douglas County. There's a lot fewer wells in the northwestern part of the state, the northern part of the state in general, but in particular the northwestern part of the state. And in the proposal that begins September 15th of 2021, right, they asked us to produce a sediment thickness map. They didn't indicate what scale, and instead of trying to do that for the entire state, what we determined to do was, or proposed to do, was to focus on higher resolution, 1 to 100,000 scale sediment thickness map for northwestern Wisconsin. So the county is shaded here. And the reason we selected these counties is this is a broad area where there is a paucity of 1 to 100,000 scale mapping. So we will be focusing our efforts in the northwestern part of the state. in the future, and having a sediment thickness map could aid us in things like determining where we would like to put rotosonic borings. So all that being said, right, as with last year, the action item for the committee today is to vote to approve continued rotosonic sample collection of Quaternary sediment in our target areas. And again, we're keeping this broad as to the target areas because even if I select a region, like the Superior region, and propose a specific site, I may find that I'm unable to get to that site. And by the time we get to this drilling, especially in these times when we have a lot of delays due to the pandemic, perhaps we'll decide that we really would like to do more work in the Driftless area. And so the proposal is written such that we intend to go to a certain region. We highlight that region in the proposal, but we do have caveats in there that these are the target areas, broadly speaking. So this is my suggested language for your resolution today. Of course, the committee can modify that as it sees fit. So again, thanks for your attention. I'm Elmo Rawling, and there's my email. If you would like any information about any of the projects I mentioned, the mapping in Bayfield County, the borings in Bayfield County, the work in Jefferson County, or the bedrock elevation sediment thickness maps that Matt Raywald's been working on, do send me an email. I'm sorry I couldn't be with the committee today. Eric's going to be covering any questions for me. It's my wife's 50th birthday, and I decided to join her instead of y'all. All right, thanks.